The culinary history of the region is quite fascinating.
I'll just have a glass of milk.
The culinary arts have been around possibly as long as we have, but it hasn't always looked the same as it does right now. So here are 15 mind-blowing facts about food history.
Want to broaden your cultural horizons?
Oh, no, thank you.
The Moon Munchies.
This astronaut food isn't too bad.
If you've ever wondered what the brave astronauts who first stepped on the moon ate, it actually wasn't much different to what you might eat on a Sunday morning. While the food was freeze-dried and packaged up for space, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin had a meal of bacon, peaches, sugar cookies, pineapple grapefruit juice, and coffee after their first steps on the moon.
Hey guys, guess who's back from space?
Surprisingly, this isn't the first time the American breakfast staple of bacon has made its way into the great vacuum of space. Eating bacon on missions actually has a long history at NASA, first making an appearance in the meal kits of the Apollo missions. So next time you grab a strip of bacon, just remember, it's the breakfast of astronauts. Potato patch protectors.
So I hate potato. The chili hides the potato.
While Spaniards have always found the potato to be a hot ticket item, the French weren't quite as keen on the idea of these little spuds. Believing that potatoes caused leprosy, the French Parliament even banned potatoes in 1748. So when Antoine Augustin Parmentier discovered the potato was actually as nutritious as it was delicious, he wanted to bring the vegetable into the French diet. The problem was that the French absolutely despised potatoes, and no matter what Parmentier did, Frenchmen still refused to eat the spuds. So Parmentier did what any intelligent person would do. He relied on human greed to get the job done.
I'm something of a scientist myself.
He planted an entire farm of potatoes and hired guards for it, but specifically told them to let people steal the potatoes. Thinking that the vegetable was a valuable item, the French actually began stealing potatoes and cooking with them. Now, potatoes are a staple in French cuisine, but it's funny to think that wasn't always the case. A baguette's spiteful cousin.
Ciabatta, get away from my brain.
It's strange to think that the traditional Italian bread of ciabatta was only invented in 1982. But it's even weirder when you know the only reason it exists is pure spite. You see, it all started with a savvy businessman named Arnaldo Cavallari and the overwhelming popularity of the French baguette. With so many baguettes being imported from France to make sandwiches, Cavallari was scared his bakery would fail from the lack of sales.
Bankruptcy!
Instead of letting the French win, Cavallari decided to make his own take on the baguette and sell it as a traditional Italian staple. His version of the baguette began to soar in popularity and is now what we know as ciabatta. It's funny to think that such a staple of Italian baking is less than 40 years old. Black gold.
Now I come here for gold.
Black pepper has a long history as the king of spices all around the world. I mean, the Romans, the Greeks, and the Chinese claimed its medicinal properties were miraculous, and it was even used as a currency once upon a time.
Is this worth it?
This was all largely because black pepper mostly came from India, so moving such big amounts of it to the Western world required hundreds of thousands of laboring men. In a time where a lot of spice was actually more valuable than precious metals, black pepper was actually nicknamed black gold and used as currency or collateral in a lot of business negotiations around the world. In these times, people would give up their gold for a bit of black pepper. Impossible to imagine, isn't it? A three-pronged defiance of God.
Oh, fork me.
Did you know that forks were banned for a whopping 400 years because they were thought to cause the plague? Well, that's just a small part of the fork's shockingly controversial history. The upper classes of the Middle East commonly used forks, but when they were brought to Europe by Maria of Byzantine's marriage to Venetian royalty, it caused a scandal.
That's not how we do it, ma'am.
Up until this point in history, Europeans had been using just their hands to eat food, as they claimed that God had given them all the tools they needed. Of course, Maria had grown up thinking that eating with your hands was dirty and for the poor, so she refused to accept this part of Venetian culture. When Maria died of the plague, the Venetians blamed it on her use of the fork. They claimed that God had seen her vanity and struck her down for it. From then on, using forks was seen as an utter defiance of God. It took hundreds of years and royal marriages for the fork to be acceptable to eat with again. Greek gods and waffle irons?
The waffle iron! It's turned against us!
If you think your waffle iron is something you can't possibly live without, you will be happy to know that the ancient Greeks thought the same. Though it was heated by a fire and not an outlet, the ancient Greeks used two metal plates similar to our waffle irons of today to make their own version.
Stop bidding on my waffle iron.
The Greek waffles were perhaps closer to what we'd call a wafer nowadays, but the process and batter were actually really similar. A batter of flour and water was poured into a metal plate with a wooden handle. Then an identical plate was placed on top of the first, squashing the batter until it cooked. Ending up in the recognizable shape of a wafer, these creations soon made their way into Europe and evolved into the waffles and waffle irons we enjoy today. The Pearl of Democracy.
Now come, and I shall teach you of democracy.
While the ancient Greeks might be famous for their waffle irons and democracy, you should also know that they used the shells of an oyster much more than they used the pearls. In fact, the pearls of oysters were pretty much discarded. The ancient Greeks loved to eat their oysters, but the shells didn't exactly go to waste. Instead of chucking their oyster shells, the ancient Greeks would use them. They would scratch votes into the shells and put them all in a pile, making the vote secret and setting the basis of the democracy we enjoy today.
This democracy, your democracy.
The word ostracize, which means to cast someone out, actually has its roots in the Greek word for oyster, ostrion, due to the ancient Greeks. These votes often resulted in someone being kicked out of the city or society they were in. So to be sent into exile meant being ostracized. A sweet spending habit.
Chocolate.
We don't often think of chocolate as anything but a sweet treat, but the ancient Mayans and Aztecs had a different idea. Actually, cacao beans were seen as an integral and important part of Mesoamerican religion, culture, art, politics, and even their economy. Yes, you heard me right. In the old days of Mesoamerica, cacao beans were used as currency. When the beans were made into chocolate, such a treat was only available to the higher class citizens.
Oh my heavens, we're peasants.
Never take another chocolate bar or piece of chocolate for granted, because once upon a time, it could have bought you your next week of dinners. Death by chocolate.
Dangerous stuff inside.
Speaking of our sweet friend chocolate, did you know that it almost killed Sir Winston Churchill in World War II? There was an assassination plot to kill Mr. Churchill in which chocolate played an essential role. Don't believe us? Well, here's some more information on the matter. Nazi bomb makers had actually managed to make small explosives and coat them with a thin layer of rich, dark chocolate. Using Nazi spies that were hidden within the ranks of the British military, the chocolate bars were smuggled into the UK, and the plan to assassinate the Prime Minister began to unfold.
Uh-oh, I guess we shouldn't have made him eat it.
Luckily, the plan was sniffed out by MI5 agents and finally uncovered and foiled by the chief of MI5. All of the booby-trapped desserts were destroyed before they can even hope to reach Churchill. Talk about a decadent plot. The truth about pasta.
From China. All the way from China.
We may famously attribute pasta to the Italians, but did you know that it might actually be Chinese? Shocking, I know. The famous Italian Marco Polo spent several years in China and actually brought noodles back from the Asian country, introducing them to the Italians.
Something new is born.
but anyone who's had Italian spaghetti and Chinese noodles will know that they are not one and the same. While some believe that the introduction of the Chinese noodle into Italy inspired the making of pasta, other food historians argue that pasta was already a budding cuisine before Marco Polo made his trip back. Either way, both options are delicious, and we're glad they came to be. Colors of the carrot.
In a wide variety of colors.
If you ask anyone nowadays what color a carrot is, they'll say orange. But if you asked anyone the same thing before the 16th century, they'd tell you a different story. In fact, the orange color of carrots is a genetic mutation. Before the 16th century, carrots came in yellow, white, or purple, but almost never orange. While fighting for Dutch independence, Dutch farmers actually began to purposefully breed only orange carrots as a tribute to William of Orange.
I'm a carrot!
Orange carrots slowly took over the market, and here we are today with mostly orange carrots on our farms. Crazy to think that Dutch politics gave the carrot its iconic appearance. It's clearer in hindsight.
No ketchup! No ketchup!
Ketchup is often called tomato ketchup because when ketchup was first invented, it actually wasn't made from tomatoes. The signature condiment actually has its roots in China, where it was made from mainly fish entrails. In fact, when tomatoes were first brought to Europe from South America, the Europeans were suspicious of the round red fruit.
What is this? Fruit?
You see, tomatoes were classified as part of the deadly nightshade family and were thought to be extremely poisonous. As ketchups, made from everything from oysters to mushrooms and even peaches, became popular, 1812 brought forth the introduction of the tomato ketchup we know today. Other types of ketchup sort of fizzled out of popularity, leaving only our beloved tomato ketchup left standing. Liberty cabbage.
Sauerkraut, das ist gut.
Though you may have never heard of Liberty cabbage, you may know it by another name. Does sauerkraut ring any bells? Yeah, I thought it might. During the early years of World War I, the perception of Germany began to change in the American media. This caused a certain discourse in the United States because, well, they loved their sauerkraut, but even the name of the food was very German.
Sounds American, but probably isn't.
But Americans didn't stop eating their sauerkraut. Oh no, they wouldn't dream of it. Instead, the Americans renamed sauerkraut Liberty cabbage for some time. Because, of course, changing the name of the food definitely changed its origin, right? Ancient Egypt worshipped gods, cats, and onions.
Uncle Onion!
We've talked about the ancient Greeks, the Middle East, China, and many more ancient cultures, but we haven't touched on how ancient Egypt, one of the most advanced ancient societies, worshipped onions. Yes, you heard that right, onions. Just like Shrek compared his own layers to those of an onion, the ancient Egyptians saw the layers of an onion as a reflection of the eternity of their soul's existence.
Ogres are like onions.
As such, onions and onion flowers are found all over corpses from ancient Egypt. Using them as a basis of many religious ceremonies and funerals, the paintings of various onions can be seen along with the hieroglyphs encoding the tombs of important pharaohs. Do you think if we pray to an onion, we won't cry the next time we cut into one? Won't hurt to try. An appealing alternative.
Want to cut up a banana without peeling it?
While wartime was an existentially hard time for a lot of reasons, the British felt that the lack of bananas was a particularly painful blow. Due to missing one of their favorite fruits, the United Kingdom of the 1940s fought against the rationing of the banana with their own solution, the mock banana. As the war raged around them, imported foods were minimized as much as possible, and the much-beloved banana was found missing from many shelves across the country. No one quite knows who's behind the first mock banana recipe, but the idea swept the nation and created a legend that's lasted until today.
It's phenomenal.
The mock banana recipe was one that turned sweet parsnips into a mash that somewhat tasted like banana, with the aid of a whole lot of sugar. So if you ever can't find bananas at your local supermarket, I guess you could always try wandering over to the parsnip section. find another great video. Just tap or click, then hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell.